4 weeks of homicide led to a full week of demands for action and resolve against criminal violence in the River City.
And I'm glad to see so many of you who decided that today, a baby you knew nothing about several hours ago now matters so much to you, because that baby is a symbol that this city will not drown in decadence or depravity.
That local pastor joins us this morning. Plus, surprises and suspense from Iowa, paving the way for the next early voting state, New Hampshire. Our panel examines the presidential candidates and surveys the campaign landscapes on This Week in Jacksonville. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. You know, the city of Jacksonville still reeling after a violent month. 2 shocking deaths in a short time last week, one involving a 22-month-old who died in a gang shooting, and one where a cab driver was found killed. Community leaders and law enforcement, they've made efforts to work together, and they're asking for community involvement as well. Hundreds gathered at this scene to remember 22-month-old Aiden McClendon, who died in that drive-by the final Friday night of January. The rash of crime also prompted the families of slain children to organize a rally in northwest Jacksonville. Activists, community leaders, people who have directly felt the impact of violence all shared their ideas on the problem. Some favored a focus on prevention, others wanted more policing. Everyone in attendance agreed that something needs to be done. And one of the people shouting that message from the mountaintops, Bishop John Guns, St. Paul Church of Jacksonville. So good to have you with us, but I'm burdened, I'm saddened that it's because we get to talk about violence and death once again. You responded immediately to the killing of that 22-month-old Aiden McClendon. Why? Why did that strike the match or light the fire for you and so many other people who are speaking out right now?
Well, you know, Kent, at the end of the day, the death of a 22-month-old is the greatest tragedy for me. They can't fight back. They are oblivious to what's going on. They are the ultimate victim. Random, no sensitivity, and at the end of the day, a life is cut short that could have and would have been a positive impact in the world.
You know, you talk of positive impacts. You've spent some time championing the cause of mentoring young men in Jacksonville. And you've declared that this is not about black or white. It's about maybe negligence or neglect in certain communities. So what are the answers here? Maybe even what are the problems? What are the causes?
Well, you know, ultimately, and, you know, I have a very dear friend who you will be talking to very soon, Pastor Newman, said something, you know, a year ago that I think is very true, and that is the fact that you're talking about a city that has at times not understood the importance of every resident being provided with access to employment, access to quality education. And at the end of the day, when you look at joblessness, and poor housing, when you look at substandard educational opportunities, what you create is a climate and a culture where a subculture is created. This subculture now becomes desperate, if you will, and that desperation creates helplessness and hopelessness. And so the violence is not just a bunch of lawless young men and women. It's actually a climate and a culture that as a city we must partner to change.
So how does that bring up the formula for change? What are the components there? Because, you know, the mayor has said, hey, we're going to give more money to police. We're going to add officers. The sheriff says, yep, I can use that and that'll help. But you're saying that's not the only thing.
No, that's not the only thing. And of course, I'm a supporter of the mayor and the sheriff. And I believe that that's a part of it. You know, enforcement is a part of this. We need not be blind to the fact that there are some people who are breaking the law and they need to be arrested. But that's not going to solve this or fix this. The key, I believe, has to do with creating partnerships between government, law enforcement, faith-based, business, and education, and creating opportunities whereby investment in certain communities is increased and intensified. And at the end of the day, if you give a young man or a young woman an opportunity, a job, then you provide them with a transition from this kind of destructive culture that ultimately has nothing but two dead ends, either death or prison.
you and I a year and a half ago, maybe, in your church. Was there to cover a story. But we spent time praying for the end of violence and for our community.
Absolutely.
And for change. And so here we are, 18 months later, and it's kind of the same issues. Is it discouraging to you, or do you have hope that things will change, that we can make a difference?
I am both discouraged and hopeful. You know, I'm saddened by what I see, but I'm encouraged by what I see. Our city is coming together. Pastors are coming together. On Monday, over 2,000 persons met at the Bethel Church, and our mayor stood before us and in tears spoke of his frustration and his resolve. Our sheriff is committed. Our leaders are committed. And at the end of the day, and you know this about me, is that I believe in the building of bridges. I have a problem with this kind of cynical, divisive approach to the problem. I think the only way for this to work is that we've got to choose to work together. And at the end of the day, only by trusting each other and we all acknowledging that this is not their problem, it's our problem, will this really be worked through.
Yeah. Well, a lot to work through.
Yeah.
But it really was something to see a unified stance there.
Absolutely.
Right after we found out about these killings, to have so many people in the community, and you saw it in some of the video we just showed, people coming together and saying, we're going to make a difference. Bishop John Guns, thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you.
For joining us this morning. Well, the heat turns up on candidates ahead of New Hampshire's presidential primary. Our panel coming up. We've got some bold statements following Iowa. That's next on This Week in Jacksonville. Stay with us.
Question for both candidates. Do you value large selection when shopping for an RV?
Yes, yes, yes. We expect to choose from a huge inventory.
There's no debate when it comes to the best RV selection. Everyone is shopping and buying at Dick Gore's RV World.
I'm Dick Gore, and I approve this message.
Listen to this unbelievable opportunity to own large acreage lakefront land in St. Johns County at huge discounts. Bank foreclosure allows an opportunity that took 4 years of negotiations, makes these large parcels available, priced at 75% less than new development prices. Imagine 3 acres with 600 feet of lakefront for only $49.9. Learn more. Take a virtual tour at 866-NFLland.com or call 866-NFL-LAND.
This is Pastor R.J. Washington of the Titus Harvest Dome. Join us on Channel 4 every Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m. We're going to have a God time. Yes.
Make tomorrow awesome with Xfinity TV from Comcast. Right now, you can get Xfinity TV for just $19.99 a month for 12 months, with Xfinity On Demand included. Call 1-800-566-8080 today. Xfinity On Demand delivers thousands of hit shows, top movies, and more at no additional cost, so you can catch up on the latest episodes of TV's hottest shows anytime, anywhere. Switch to Xfinity TV for just $19.99 a month for 12 months, with Xfinity On Demand included. Plus, ask how you can add HBO, Showtime, or Stars and enjoy award-winning TV shows and movies at home and on the go. There's no term contract and no early termination fee. Plus, it's all backed by our 30-day money-back Comcast customer guarantee, so it's risk-free. Tomorrow could be awesome if you call today. Call 1-800-566-8080. That's 1-800-566-8080. Xfinity, the future of awesome.
When you've been injured in an accident, it's very important to call Heroine Harrell early in the process. We will sit down and talk with you for free. Ultimately, our goal is to get you the justice that you deserve.
Heroine Harrell. Don't settle for less than you deserve.
Get ready for the 2016 Gate River Run, Jacksonville's premier running event. If you're a competitive runner or run just for fun, there's an event for you. Register for the 15K, 5K, or 1 mile event. Then join Channel 4 on March 12th at the Jacksonville Sports Complex. Get all the details at GateRiverRun15K.com.
8:45 a.m. Southside. 550 athletes, 4 counties, 1 tough competition. Volunteering to help Special Olympic athletes have the time of their lives. That's why when Evelyn gets up, she turns on Channel 4. She can track fast-moving storms with the Weather Authority app, find trouble spots with time-saver traffic, and get breaking news from a team she considers family. On these fields, volunteers make special smiles happen. In Jacksonville, the Morning Show makes mornings happen.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
And a transition now from some some of that violence we talked about to the skirmishes going on in presidential politics. If you notice, there's a presidential campaign going on here in 2016. So let me introduce you to our panel. Dr. Michael Binder from UNF is with us, along with Rick Mullaney at JU, the Public Policy Institute, and John Newman from Newman Strategies and Solutions. So let's look at first Republicans, and we'll talk about Democrats as well. Surprises out of Iowa. What did you see?
I think Donald Trump paid the ultimate price by not having boots on the ground and having real strong GOTV get out the vote apparatus. And I therefore saw this coming. This was forecast as far as I'm concerned.
You saw it ahead of time.
Sure.
Did Trump? Did Donald Trump? Because he kept saying,
not.
My polls are perfect and, you know, whatever. Yeah.
Well, that's always his measuring rod at 30,000 feet. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the political process, you've got to get your people to the polls. And I think maybe he thought because of the size of his ego that he could do it a different way and get it done. But he found out the hard way that that's not possible.
Yeah. Did you see any of what happened really in Iowa coming?
I think we learned a couple of things. One, you always expect in Iowa that the folks that cater to the evangelicals, the white Christian conservatives, always tend to do better, and that was Cruz's target base. This was his heaven, and he did okay. And I think we learned that, you know, maybe absent the GOT vote, but a lot of Trump supporters might just be fans and not actually be voters. And that was always a question, and we're starting to learn that maybe there's a little more fan vote than actual voting.
Yeah, Rick, what do you think about that?
I think there's some truth in that, and I think there's some truth in what John said. But let me say this. I think the Iowa results are very significant, not because of who won, but because of who didn't. And by that I mean, if Donald Trump had won, and he had the momentum the week before, he was 5 points up in the Des Moines, Iowa register going into Monday. If he had won, the calendar set up in such a way with New Hampshire and South Carolina and Nevada that he may have been unstoppable. The result in Iowa changes the game on the Republican side. It is now game on. Big momentum for Ted Cruz. Big momentum for Marco Rubio. I thought Iowa was a game changer on the Republican side.
Well, it's interesting. I'd heard from some of the insiders with the Ted Cruz campaign there. Oh, we like our polls. We think we've got a chance in Iowa. Let me ask about Marco Rubio. This was maybe the best I've just won speech for a guy who finished third that I think I've ever heard. That was strategic, wasn't it?
He did win. He was absolutely the winner. Yes, Cruz won, but he didn't do as good as he could have. Trump is obviously the big loser, but Rubio came up. He is positioned well. He overperformed expectations, which is always important in these early primary states. And now, as you start to see these candidates drop out, and they're dropping like flies, we lost 3 this week, where is that support going to go? It's not going to go to Trump. Trump is nobody's second choice, and Rubio's positioned to gain a lot of that.
John, if you're advising somebody, giving them some strategy, would you do that? Would you say Marco Rubio? Go out there and say you're going to be the next president.
I think Marco, I would agree with the professor that he is very, very well positioned. He's going to mop up a lot of the support that other folks are going to give him who are falling out. Donald Trump has a particular ceiling, and I think that the breakdown of the vote in Iowa kind of shows what that ceiling is. I don't think he'll get more than 30%. Now, what do you do with the other 70%? Marco Rubio is very strongly positioned. And I would just tell him to be above the fray. Talk about the future, not get into the weeds of personality, to avoid that. Because people really want elections to be about the future and not the past. And he, in many ways, has been cast as the future of the Republican Party, and I would stay right in that lane.
Well, it's interesting. I saw, even on a tweet earlier this week, Rubio carefully avoiding attacking Trump at every turn. Today, that day, he turned a question on Trump into an attack on Cruz. So he's certainly staying out of Trump's side, and for the most part, he's not making big attacks across the parties. It seems like he's kept it focused on Democrats and how I'm going to run the country in the future, Rick.
Oh, very much so. And by the way, he's a gifted speaker. And to go to the point earlier, the Des Moines Register poll on Saturday before the election showed him at 15%. He came in at above 23%. His best polling was on Election Day. He almost came in second place, and it is all about momentum and perception in Iowa. It's only 30 delegates. They give them out proportional. Cruz now has 8, Trump and Rubio 7. So it's not about that. It's about the perception, and Marco Rubio truly was a big winner, as was Ted Cruz, however. Yeah. It was a big win for him, great ground game, great organization, evangelical vote. But Marco Rubio really has a lot of momentum going into Tuesday.
All right.
And Rubio is avoiding the back and forth between Cruz and Trump.
Yeah.
And you saw what that did to Jeb Bush a couple of months ago, and you see where he is now. And by Rubio learning from that, I think that's helped his tremendously.
I did want to ask about Governor Bush here. Yeah, what were you going to say?
If there's a caveat, the caveat is this. In Iowa, they have a terrible record of selecting the Republican nominee. Michelle Bachmann,
right.
Rick Santorum,
yeah.
Ted Cruz. All I'm saying is.
Well, in New Hampshire...
Translation, it's early.
In New Hampshire, they like to say Iowa picks corn, New Hampshire picks presidential winners.
I'm just saying.
Wow. Well, so let's take a quick look at one of the polls. Polls are coming out almost daily, it seems like. But let's show you one here, the GOP poll ahead of New Hampshire. And this was actually taken January 27th through 30th. Trump was at 30%, Cruz 12%, Rubio 11%. That top three had Kasich 9%, Chris Christie at 8%, and Jeb Bush at 6%. I actually want to show you some video here we have from Jeb Bush campaigning this last week. Is this indicative of where he stands in the campaigns right now? Because he's talking, and then all of a sudden the lights go out, and then he makes a statement and actually asks people, would you please clap? Is it a scuffle and a struggle, and is this almost done for the former Florida governor?
I don't want to say he's absolutely done, because the way New Hampshire is set up, a lot of the moderates, the Bushes, the Christies, the Kasichs, they didn't even try in Iowa. And if one of them can put together a little bit of push and kind of beat the other two, suddenly they become a potential alternative, and maybe they get some momentum into South Carolina, and then when you get back down to the South, maybe the SEC primary and Super Tuesday, but it doesn't look good.
Yeah, should Bush perform well in New Hampshire?
Let me say this. Well, you start off with 17 candidates. We're now down to 8. And there's 3 governors in New Hampshire that are battling it out, Kasich, Christie, and Bush. And there's room for the 4th person to make it to the top 4. And by that I mean, right now it looks like a Trump, Cruz, Rubio battle. But the governor who finishes in 4th, maybe 5th, can go on to South Carolina with a little bit of momentum. It is a real battle. You've seen some life from Bush and Kasich and Christie in New Hampshire. That, among those 3, that's something to really keep an eye on.
All right, I'll tell you what, we've looked at Republicans here. Democrats on the docket next, as supporters in Jacksonville even start working the phones. We'll show you some of that, and we'll explain next on This Week in Jacksonville.
Public notice, final 24 hours. It's the end of the massive $15 million warehouse inventory sell-off at Ashley Furniture Home Stores in the Jacksonville and Brunswick area. It's your absolute last chance to take advantage of drastic price cuts on furniture and mattresses store-wide. Don't wait, don't hesitate. Hurry into Ashley Furniture Home Stores. It's the final 24 hours.
What's up with negative calorie foods? As soon as you start eating them, you start getting this extra burn.
Can you really chew your way thin? And the dangerous diet trends you have to see to believe. All new Oz.
Monday at 4 on Channel 4.
Play Monsoon.
The usual.
Yep.
How are you tracking?
Right on time.
The 2016 Toyota Corolla. The perfect ride for the perfect drive.
See you tomorrow.
Get a low 0% APR for 60 months on a new 2016 Toyota Corolla. Toyota, let's go places.
I'm John Morgan of Morgan & Morgan. For almost 30 years, we've represented hundreds of thousands of people and have collected billions of dollars in settlements and verdicts for things that were wrongfully taken from our client, their health and loved ones, financial security and peace of mind, standing up for people, bringing those to justice who did them wrong. We fight bullies and rule breakers for a living. Morgan & Morgan, for the people.
If I had to replace all of my teeth, I wouldn't want to be without them for even a single day. It's simply not an option. That's why Highbridge makes so much sense. You always have teeth. Most people are completely done in less than 4 months, and the doctors are absolutely incredible. Now that's something to smile about. Call your Highbridge certified doctor today. They'll answer all of your questions. Highbridge, the simple way to a lasting smile.
Listen up, America. This is an important medical alert for anyone suffering from back or knee pain. If you or a loved one suffers from back or knee pain and have Medicare as your primary insurance, relief is now a phone call away. If you have Medicare, you may immediately qualify to receive your back or knee brace at little or no cost. We also have braces available for shoulders, ankles, and wrists. The call is free and there's no obligation.
Call 800-379-9275.
final 24 hours. It's the final hours to save during the massive $15 million warehouse inventory sell-off at Ashley Furniture Home Stores in the Jacksonville and Brunswick area. Tons of furniture and mattresses are priced to sell during the massive $15 million warehouse inventory sell-off at Ashley Furniture Home Stores. Final 24 hours.
What are you really eating when you order lobster? Are you getting the real thing? You may think it's lobster, but wait till you see what our investigation found. Watch the next Inside Edition.
Monday at 7:30 on Channel 4.
Our panel of Mike Binder, John Newman, Rick Mullaney staying with us. And we looked at races on the right for a few minutes. Let's talk about the left. Sanders and Clinton essentially tied in Iowa no matter who declared the winner. Why is that significant in your opinion?
Well, I think it's significant for two reasons. One, Hillary Clinton's a much better candidate when she's pressed. When she feels pressure and heat, she's much better. And she's starting to get that now. So this will sharpen her for the fall. Because outside Bernie Sanders' campaign staff and fervent supporters, I think most people understand that Hillary Clinton's going to win this nomination, and probably in a couple weeks she'll have it essentially wrapped up after Super Tuesday.
Well, what if Bernie Sanders goes in New Hampshire and blows it away, as some project that he will? It's his home stomping grounds there.
Well, yeah, that's expected, but you look at the composition of South Carolina with the African-American vote, and Hillary has a preponderance of support there. I don't see Bernie breaking into that anytime soon, if possible. Look at Nevada. Look at the rest of the map. By Super Tuesday, it's probably all over. But, you know, in politics, anything is possible. And so I know that Sanders' campaign is working very hard to move into the African-American ranks. I just don't think there's enough time for him to do that.
Yeah. Rick, what was your thought on what happened on the Democrat side there in Iowa?
I thought both Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders had some things to be pleased on the Iowa results. Hillary Clinton had to have a sigh of relief, even at the narrow margin that she came out on top. Iowa has not been good to her or her husband in the past. I think she was glad to come out with a win. Now, I grant you, Bernie Sanders, she had a big lead that narrowed, but it was good for her to win. And Bernie Sanders, it's historic, compared to where he was 9 months ago, compared to where he was 3 months ago. But he needed to win Iowa. The two states on the map, you could throw in Vermont as a third state, the two states that he was likely to win are Iowa and New Hampshire. I agree with the colleagues here. Post-New Hampshire, it doesn't set up well. Latino vote in Nevada, African-American vote in South Carolina. The demographics of the rest of the map are very different from Iowa and New Hampshire. Come Super Tuesday on March 1st, I think it changes dramatically. It goes Hillary Clinton.
I want to show you some photos from here in Jacksonville just this last week as we talk about the Democrats running for president. Local activist Lisa King sent some photos from this past Wednesday night, meeting at a business in 5 Points area of Riverside. King tells us about 20 callers, more than 1,800 calls were made, hundreds of commitments, over 50 new volunteers identified. Who are they campaigning for? Hillary Clinton. They kind of took over Brew, the craft beer and espresso bar there. And that was ahead of that town hall meeting that the Sanders and Clinton had this last week. How much more impact is there for candidates, we'll talk just about the Democratic candidates here, to have those town halls or those debates? Does it make a difference because more people are getting to see Bernie Sanders and hear his views versus Hillary Clinton's comebacks to his accusations?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you're a Democratic voter and you don't know how you feel about Hillary Clinton, you're not a voter. You're not going to show up. You have baked-in opinions about her. But being exposed to Bernie Sanders, maybe you don't know him as well. Maybe you can get a feel for who he is and what he's about. But I think the real important thing about New Hampshire on the Democratic side, if Bernie Sanders wins handily, and it looks like he's going to, what happens to the independent voters? Do they decide to vote in a Democratic primary for a race that looks like a blowout? Or do they wander over to the Republican side? And does that help those moderate governors we just talked about, the Christies, the Bushes, and maybe a Kasich? That's going to be interesting to see the turnout differential between the Democrats and Republicans.
John, I'm going to lean on your experience here as well for a moment. Hillary Clinton had said in her opening remarks there at that town hall meeting, I have an uphill climb. So we just talked about, she was happy. Hey, at least even by a slim margin, she was declared the winner in Iowa. Why go with that narrative? Why project, oh, hey, I'm in comeback mode, and is it to draw more support?
Well, it could be that, but also because he's trying to maintain some level of expectation on what's going to happen in terms of this particular primary. If she can keep the expectations in which she's somehow not the presumptive nominee that fits for her. So if she can come in second and still win the narrative. If she comes in a strong second and comes close to where Bernie is, or even within, I would say, 10 points, that becomes the narrative. Yeah, for her, that becomes the narrative.
It's okay for her to be behind, or at least to say,
Absolutely.
hey, everybody,
New
I'm
Hampshire,
behind.
yes.
In New Hampshire, absolutely, yes.
Let me show you a New Hampshire poll, by the way. Speaking of behind, this poll had Bernie Sanders at 57%, Hillary Clinton 34%. Again, that was a CNN poll here from just before we got into the new month. Nothing surprising there for any of us, right?
No, remember, Bernie Sanders, he's from Vermont. New Hampshire itself is white, it's liberal. The demographics set up perfectly for him. I agree. If she can narrow it, it's a win. Regardless, post-New Hampshire, I think Hillary Clinton's in good shape. And going something that John said earlier, the organizational skills in the ground game, she has built a very strong organization. She has a strong ground game. It helped her in Iowa. It'll help her nationally. She's very formidable. On the debates, they've agreed to more debates. I think that's a good thing. I think Hillary Clinton has improved as the result of the debates. She's a very fine debater. But Bernie Sanders has a voice, and he is really tapping into young people and women, and he's got a point of view that is caught with a lot of people. Now, I don't give him a great deal of chance to winning the nomination, but he's a very appealing candidate. He's appealing to a lot of people. They have more debates coming. It could help him.
Well, what about this appeal? He said this last week, independent senator, of course, self-described Democratic socialist. He says that now in his heart he considers himself a Democrat. Does anybody buy that among Democrats? Does it matter if they buy that among Democrats?
Well, I think that's also so he can appeal to the Democratic Party and base. But he's always caucused, even as a congressperson and now senator, he's caucused with the Democrats. So he is, for the most part, by and large, a Democrat. But that doesn't mean that Hillary's not going to use that to come against him, saying that he's not really a Democrat. He may be using the Democratic Party to get elected because there's no other apparatchik available to him. But for the most part, he's been a Democrat in terms of his policies on the left, liberal, progressive side, but certainly he's been a Democrat in terms of his policies and what he supported in Congress.
So we got about a minute left, so let me take a wrap-up statement from each of you on what you expect here as we go into New Hampshire this week and continue the process.
Well, if you believe the polling, Donald Trump will be your winner, as will Bernie Sanders in terms of New Hampshire. But the real winners to take a look at second, third, and fourth place in New Hampshire on the Republican side. On the Democratic side, see if Hillary closes the gap.
All right. Yeah, and I think this is good for Hillary, a close race, because yes, it sharpens her, yes, it gets it better, but that organization that you showed, if Hillary can have this going, it bleeds into the fall. You don't have to stop your campaign because you've already wrapped it up and get these people back 6 months later. You can keep them working. All right. We'll see if that lasts.
John Newman, sorry, 10 seconds. Wrap it.
Well, I think first of all, it's politically Dickensian. In Iowa, you have these conservatives, these cultural conservatives. Over in New Hampshire, you have the moderates. And I think because of that, political outcome will be reflective of that.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us this morning. We'll see you again next week on This Week in Jacksonville.
At News 4 Jax, we're always covering the news, even when we're not on TV. Stay informed, on the go, and online at news4jax.com.